late 80s and throughout the 1990s, millions of people for the first time learned how to touch type. That is the style of typing on a computer without looking at the keys, through a software program called Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing. While it went through numerous iterations over the years, Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing featured a black businesswoman in its tutorials. A woman people assumed was a real person named Mavis Beacon, but was in fact someone else entirely. In real life, the original Mavis Beacon was a Haitian model named Renee L'Esperance, and she mysteriously vanished decades ago. In the new documentary distributed by Neon, titled Seeking Mavis Beacon, director Jazmin Jones and her co-collaborator Olivia Michaela Ross set out to uncover what happened to Renee and why. It's a documentary about who owns and controls our public identities and likeness, even in the earliest days of the internet, all the way to the present day, when artificial intelligence continues to poke at these polarizing questions in the name of corporate profit. Seeking Mavis Beacon is now playing at New Parkway and the Roxy Theater here in the Bay Area, and I'm sitting here with a Bay Area native as well, Jazmin Jones, the director of the film, which premiered at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival. Jazmin, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much. That was so fun to listen in on. Really beautiful introduction.
I enjoyed reading it. I didn't come up with all that on the fly, for those of you who can't see. So, Jazmin, since your film premiered earlier this year, it's continuing to find its way to more audiences, of course, which should hopefully be very exciting. It's your first film. I want to know what's been sticking out to you as you've been talking to more people who've been watching the film for the first time. Have you been having any interesting conversations with folks that have, over the last few months, maybe illuminated some things for you or been very interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much different archival material in the film. And so I have my own relationship to why I've cited these sources. But there's been a few instances where people tell me more lore about archival clips that I've included that deepen the meaning beyond what I even knew. So, for example, there's a scene in the film, we talk about this idea of cyber doulas, right? Or, you know, this entity, whoever it may be, maybe it was Mavis Beacon for you, of someone who stewards a healthy relationship between you and technology. So that could be your computer operations teacher, or if you're like me, that's Mavis Beacon. And in the film, we include this clip of, there's very little footage of doulas, actually, when you're trying to like make a video.
I never heard of them before until this documentary, to be totally honest.
Yeah, so if you look up like doula, midwife, like it's very hard to find footage of Black women birthing babies. And I found some in this archival clip, and somebody at a screening actually told me that this film was related, and the woman who was the doula in the footage that I included in our film actually had her own Mavis Beacon effect. And, you know, she was filmed and made the poster person for birth work and midwifery. And then the film like was traveled all throughout these different colleges. And so it's just interesting, the reverberations of like other similar stories of representation and women, and Black women specifically, who have been maybe not given their dues. So yeah, the universe, it's like I'm citing all these different memes and different things, and it's fun watching it with older audiences. You know, we talk about this character, Robert Blake, who, if you're an older person, maybe you know he was a Hollywood actor who murdered, allegedly, I don't know, allegedly didn't murder. I look into it, Google it. But there's a weird story about what happened to his ex-wife. And so certain audiences connect to that. And then we showed it to a bunch of Gen Alpha a few weeks ago at Ghetto Film School, and a character used the word aura and people were rolling. So it's just been really fun to see every audience connects to different jokes within this movie in completely different ways that I can never anticipate.
I didn't anticipate this movie being so lighthearted and being so kind of joyful while I was getting into it, because I think I started it and I had heard of Mavis Beacon because I went to school. That's how I learned to type and everything.
You're a pupil as well.
Yeah, so we had the car racing game. That was my favorite one.
Best one.
And that's why my words per minute, I think I was number 2 in my school.
Oh.
And I'll never let go of that memory. It's a weird thing that is just still up there.
You're number 1 to me. You could also, at this point, you could change the story and you could say you were number 1 at your school. That's how facts get made. This whole film is about the creation of facts. And so what's funny to me is, like, in making this film, like, we called Mavis Beacon. We're like, oh, she's the most influential woman in technology. Right.
Or the Aunt Jemima of, you compared it to something in the documentary.
The Aunt Jemima of technology.
That's it, yeah.
And then seeing like people in writing about this movie are like, and she is the most influential woman in technology. It's like, wait, we just said that. You're not going to fact check us. So for all intents and purposes, you right now have the opportunity to say you are the number one fastest typer in your school. And I'm not going to hold you.
But it's about the narrative, right? Because for me, being the number 2, I think the reason I haven't forgotten that is because while I was playing those games and I was obsessed with it because I wanted to get better and better, I remember the name. I won't say the name of the person because privacy, right? That's the point of the documentary. I remember her. She was the number 1 and I was always trying to beat her and we were friendly. Like we weren't enemies or anything. But that narrative is the thing that I cling to and is my truth, I guess. So I don't want anyone to think I was number 1.
I think if you still know her name, like what I found after making this documentary is you can find pretty much anybody online. I think you need to challenge her to a duel. And actually, we can support that on seekingmavisbeacon.com. We have a typing game that will take in your words per minute as you type affirmations. You need to contact typing speed number 1.
First, I need to train because I've probably gotten much, much worse over the years compared to when I was young and I had the reflexes of a 14-year-old.
So yeah, this is my second film. You guys are hearing it first. We figured out what my next feature will be. We'll start production, filming your training process, I don't know, next week?
Yes. Training Jon Negroni. Yeah. No, but that speaks to, I think, what I was kind of getting at, which is like, there's so much joy in this movie. It's so fun. You're getting into the personal. Clearly, you and Olivia get on so much, and you're making this movie over the course of years. And one thing that I've come across is I've also looked around. I've been kind of curious, how are other folks kind of taking this movie? The thing that I see a lot is that people are saying it's so Gen Z. And you invoke Gen Alpha too, and there's the nuance there, right? Do you think that's like a really fair assessment of the movie? Like you think of it that way as well? Because I don't think you're Gen Z, but
yeah, that's when we talk about fake news. I have to stop reading Letterboxd. Sometimes it's really affirming and sometimes it's less affirming. And so there were 2 reviews that were back to back that are hilarious. And one was like, this is such a Gen Z film. Oh my God, it's terrible. And then another one being like, maybe Gen Z should make every film. And so, yeah, I
saw that too. And I was like, but wait.
I'm not Gen Z. I'm 34 years old. Olivia is Gen Z. I think it's interesting that millennials, we got some terrible branding. Because it's like, what? Just because like I wear cool clothes and I'm online and I know how TikTok works, I'm Gen Z? Like, no, we haven't gone out for pasture yet. Like, we are still kicking with the youngins. I clearly have Arrested Development. That's why they think I'm a Gen Z. I'm claiming to be kicking with Gen Z right now. But yeah, I do think, coming back to the whimsy that you talked about, like some people think that Olivia and I are just kind of like smooth brain, girly pops, exploring things and talking about queer gay stuff. And that's true. But also, it's like, this is a very dense film. And we're trying to make these concepts of like representational politics and cyberfeminism enticing and alluring. And it is truly an investigation. This is a hybrid, but we did not know where the journey would take us. And so, this is a happy ending for us. There's a lot of ways that this story could have panned out. And that's why we included the whimsy, because we didn't know if it was going to be a tragedy at the end of this movie. And so we knew that we needed to include ourselves in our fullness and our vibrancy, because we truly did not know how things would turn out. And we wanted there to be a balance. I didn't want to make a movie for Black people that was also traumatic and harmful. We were funded in 2020 and very much, I always have to shout out George Floyd, because I think that his death was a huge contributing factor to a film like this being greenlit, right? People saying, I guess we're ready to hear what y'all have to say. And we know historically that we've seen many films of Black people down bad as slaves going through it. And so while the idea of missing Black women and that no one's looking for missing Black women is a very loaded concept, we wanted it to feel light and fun and like a healing solve, so that if we're talking about things that are triggering for certain members of our target audience, There's like, yeah, a spoonful of sugar to help that medicine go down.
Yeah. I mean, that was, for me, I'm watching this and I'm like, is something tragic going to happen? But it's so fun. There are so many memes and jokes and asides. It's like controlled chaos, I guess, because there were times when I was, I was definitely trying to process everything that was happening. And then you would find that downtime, I guess, of like, all right, let's settle in this. And I personally appreciated that because it is a subject that I did wonder, oh no, is this going to, kind of fall into the same thing that it might be criticizing, like using somebody else's likeness, invading their privacy. How do you get around that? So what were some of your strategies for getting around that as you were putting the film together, especially in post, and trying to be like, all right, where does this fully land? How did you navigate that for yourself?
I appreciate that feedback. I think that we're wading in murky waters here, right? And it's because, like, I truly think Olivia is the best thing since sliced bread and the smartest person in the world. And also, I don't want to fetishize that smartness, right? Because there's a lot that we often take these like brilliant young minds and we're like, you're going to fix everything for us and figure it all out. And so I didn't want to put that pressure on Olivia, but I take her advice very seriously, right? And so I always had a sounding board. I knew I would do anything at any cost to find Renee. And there were like two fears, right? It's like, get dragged by Black Twitter, which is really who I'm making this movie for. Black Twitter don't exist anymore, but Black people exist online. Twitter, Black X, I guess. I don't know where they are.
Black Twitter subreddits still exist.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was like, I want to make this film for the most critical people on the internet and the funniest people on the internet, the Black ones. And so I was like, okay, like I'm out here looking for a woman and let's hope this works out. And let's hope that I don't step on any toes. And then the other fear of seeing like, in the course of this production, we saw the Gabby Petito case unfold and this whole thing where you had people on Reddit that were looking for a missing woman. And that actually, I think there's an argument that was called for to some extent because she was murdered. I didn't want people to take that same energy and that same free time and apply it to Mavis Beacon. I was really fearful of people seeing this movie, saying, Olivia and I are super unserious. Oh, you left so many stones unturned. So now I'm going to go bug Renee L'Esperance and I'm going to go dig through her garbage can and I'm going to do what these two silly detectives didn't actually take seriously. So yeah, I'm competing with two things, which is on one hand, it's like, I don't want to do too much. I want to be respectful of her space. And also I want to do just enough so that nobody else comes in and feels like they should do more. And I knew that Olivia and I were moving from a place that was pure of heart, right? Whether or not, like, sometimes we fumble and sometimes we say the wrong thing and we put our foot in our mouth. But I knew that our intentions were pure and I could contain that. And so there was a version of this film, like at the beginning, we were on April Fools, we were making deep fakes and trying to go viral with the hope of that whole like energy, like TikTok, do your thing, right? Where it's like, help us find her. And then there's like a twist in the movie. I don't want to give too much away, but we learned more about the woman who modeled for the software and her feelings about representation. And I was so grateful we didn't go viral, right? And I was so grateful we didn't say like, hey, internet, help us find her. So the goal in editing the film was being like, okay, once the film is streaming and released to the internet, I want to be as explicit as possible that it is our wish and it is Renee's wish that this like stays contained to some content.
It's so striking too when you watch the movie and when you started this out, I think all the artificial intelligence stuff, AI art, if you want to call it that, has been such a touchy subject for a lot of people, very polarizing. And you were, I guess, on the front lines of that. You were investigating something that really touches on that. It seems like an interesting timing, but I guess it was always kind of inevitable with the way you talk about Mavis Beacon being this predecessor for computer technologies that present as women, right? Mm-hmm. And specifically like Alexa and Cortana and all that stuff. I would say that as you're kind of getting into this year, and a lot of that stuff is just continuing to get more and more tumultuous. A lot of people disagree on all of that. Do you consider this film to be kind of instructional in that way? Or do you think that there's still more ground that you would like to cover at some point, as a lot of this is just changing constantly?
I think this film is very much like a workbook in terms of like we're posing questions to the audience, and I have feelings. Like I have feelings about the future of tech, AI, what it all means, what we're all in for. But I also was deliberately in constructing the edit, and the film is very polemic. Like we are saying a lot. But I did want to leave some questions open, specifically around like opting in versus opting out. There are kind of two pathways that one can approach their own digital personhood, right? Which is like, I don't know, they've got you, you lean in, you upload to the cloud, you participate. And the world around us requires that, right? Like more and more, you need to be able to download an app on your phone in order to function, to navigate a city, to get around. Olivia talked about a friend who tried to buy a dumb phone, right? And she didn't last a day before she was at a laundromat and couldn't do her laundry. So yeah, there's that version of it. And there's also like the very real version of like, I don't know, we need someone to opt in, right? Like the technology will continue to develop. I want there to be critical people at the margins, Black folks, women in the rooms building and beta testing the technology of our future. And so, though I am a conspiracy theorist who is like, you have the right to disappear, read the terms and conditions, oh my God, I also didn't want to dissuade anybody from, taking up that platform and like really, yeah. So there's multiple people in the film that are technologists that I'm like, oh my God, you're fascinating. I love what you do. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. We need you here. Stephanie Dinkins, I'm talking to you. And then there's other people that are encouraging us that we don't have to participate. You don't have to opt in. You don't have to sign the terms and conditions. It's not like, it hasn't gotten away from us completely. Things are moving really fast, but we still can take control of our digital hygiene. And that's something that Olivia reminds me constantly. Yeah, it sucks that they're trying to mine our data and steal it every way they can, but you can still call a data broker and you can still ask them to remove that information. It's time. It takes a lot of time or it takes money. You can pay someone to do that. But we're still in an era where it's not like we're automatically uploaded into the matrix, right? Like you can unplug. And I think both options are totally valid. Yeah, I don't know what I'll choose. I'm clearly split between the options myself.
But it sounds like you're optimistic of like we can find a way to deal with this, to make things better, maybe make those things more accessible, because having the option to opt out is so difficult to find, especially for folks who they may not have the means, they may not have the time, as you mentioned. And even just walking here, we're in downtown San Francisco, and I've run into this couple that are just trying to find the Bloomingdale's, and they can't navigate, and I'm trying to help them, like show them, and I'm decisively not using my phone because I just feel like that's going to make it more complicated. But yeah, only because I know this area, I'm able to help them at all. But we become so reliant on just getting around and figuring out where things are. And I'm pointing out landmarks. I'm like, oh, but you don't know where that is. Oh, shoot. So it's stressful.
If Olivia were here, she's been talking, because she's always cooking up new theories, but she's been talking about the self-identification with the blue dot, right? Like how we're so used to navigating our cities through maps and apps that we self-identify with the symbol of this blue dot moving throughout the street. Whereas 10 years ago, if you showed someone this phone with a blue dot, they wouldn't know what they're looking at. But now we understand that this is like another avatar for us and our experience in the world. And like, yeah, I want to reference her other theory coming back to data trauma, right? She's talking about like the things that happen online have real life consequences. And another example she used the other day that I love is like, think about the physiological effect that you have when you lose your cell phone, right? When you've been looking for it for too long and you're going in your bag, and how your movements get more erratic and your heart rate speeds up. It's like, you can't just like, it's more than just a phone. It's so much more than that. Now it's like actually affecting how your body is processing your emotions. And so, yeah, I really appreciate her reminding me of these like larger things, and the fact that you don't have to identify with these things so deeply. And if you do, it's really nice to be critical around that.
But I love that you even bring that up of even that concept of 10 years ago. This is like a foreign thing to us, that identification. And even something like GPS, it started out so optimistic. It started out so simple and charming. Even like, I remember geocaching, right? Like trying to find these things that, like using this technology for fun to make things more interactive in the real world. But then over time, we kind of slip away from that, and kind of how we're slipping away from the Mavis Beacon part of the documentary. But I can't help it because it's just it's an irresistible topic, right?
It's meta, and it comes into, trying to tie back in the fact that we did make a feature film called Seeking Mavis Beacon that is in theaters. There's a 9-year age difference between Olivia and I. She's a Gen Z, I'm a millennial. And we talk a lot about the different internets we were raised on, right? Like, me as a millennial, the internet had not been commercialized. And so there's even a trend that I love that has been coined. It's called, I think, Scholastic Utopic for a pre-9/11 world. And it's talking about how the way that computer educational software looked in our youth was like, it's full of like grass and butterflies and animals and nature. And, like it's all of this like vibrant life that is coming out of these, jumping out of your computer screen, right? And so they were very much telling us you can do anything and the computer is going to help you do anything. And that was true to some extent. Whereas like the internet Olivia was raised on 9 years later is like, it has all been commercialized. She's aware that all her data is being stolen. They're even navigating the web outside of a social media platform is absurd. So yeah, I think that some of the worldview and some of what makes us different as investigators and makes us like a really satisfying team to watch is that we've grown up in completely different internets and have a very different relationship to what the things that we're seeing and our optimism about the future of tech.
Yeah, genuinely, I feel like I could talk to you for at least 20 straight minutes about nostalgia in terms of the internet, because it's just such a thing that I think for a lot of folks our age, we're around the same age. I mean, I think it's something that is starting to bubble up now more than ever. But yes, the Mavis Beacon portion of the documentary, obviously it's the hook, right? It's what you're hoping. It's the name of the documentary. It's what I think you're hoping people are going to come to and be like, yeah, I remember Mavis Beacon. I remember, picture of this woman and everything. And I think I have a pretty good sense of why you made this documentary. Like, I think that you go into some detail of like what sparks that interest, but how would you describe it to someone who hasn't seen the documentary yet? That urgency, that purpose that you found in this, that really drew you to the subject matter.
Yeah, it's funny. You make a film for 6 years about one fictional typing teacher, and it's still hard to summarize, like, what is it about her? Why am I so caught up on this? I think that it's like, Mavis Beacon was my first Black teacher. And on a conscious level at that age, I didn't know what that was doing for me. And I didn't know that I'd go on to identify as like an e-girl investigator and be a Tumblr person who's expressing all my emotions online. Like, the internet has been so pivotal to me expressing myself. I think some of that has to do with being a young Black queer in the suburbs, where it's like cyberspace allowed me to connect with like the subcultures that you see in the film that I didn't have access to when I was 12. And yeah, now we talk a lot about how technology is like ruining our mental health, and it is. And that is something that's happening with like overusing social media apps. Like, that's real. But at the time when I was coming of age, like, I think technology was like, it really grounded me and it kept me sane and it kept me dreaming, in terms of just like the world that I could build and be a part of. And even when I physically wasn't surrounded by other Black people or other queer people, through chat rooms and through surfing the internet, when that was actually a thing where you're like surfing the internet and using websites like Stumble Upon that are just showing you all these cool websites. It's a world of possibility, and my world was quite small. I wasn't encouraged to learn a foreign language or, go to college or a lot of these things, even though I was growing up in Silicon Valley. I was quite sheltered. And so I think even this version of me, like, leaving the Bay and going to New York and making a feature film and doing all of this is because I mean, I can't give it all to Mavis Beacon, but a lot of it, I think I can't even quantify how important it was to see a boss ass, I don't know if I can swear on this, but a boss ass Black woman in a killer suit, slick back, smiling. Like, she did something for me. And yeah, so I'll give her that credit. Why not? She gave me a whole movie. It's like, I don't know. It's given me material to like make my first feature film. I'm indebted to Mavis Beacon. I probably got to get her name tattooed somewhere.
Hey, might as well. Yeah. Just get like a beacon, like the lighthouse or something like that.
I actually have thought about getting finger tattoos with the finger plate, like the keys that are supposed to be placed, So
yeah.
like the
I thought you were going to say
ASD.
for like a punching someone, but no, that's even
No, just like the little like, because I still am a terrible typer, and that's why this is a hybrid film.
Okay.
That's the true artifice of it all. Is I hunt and peck. I was too busy connecting with the character and the avatar of Mavis Beacon to really like let the teaching sink in. So, yeah.
Well, I will say, as we're kind of wrapping this up, and it's been really fun, and I think that relatability is coming through. Mm-hmm. I think that is the thing that sticks out about this, and you trying to bring this, if anything, kind of resolve this tension that you seem to have with the wider internet, and doing it while just being yourself. I think that is probably what's going to click the most with a lot of folks who are interested or have watched the movie already and maybe putting on their Letterboxd review. I don't know. But so that makes me wonder, the movie is now in limited release. It's got to be really exciting. It's award season, so I'm sure you're going to be very, very busy for the next few months. Hopefully you'll have some time off as well. But can you speak on what might be next for you? Do you think that documentaries, films, is there anything that's speaking to you now, or are you still kind of just waiting to see what feels right?
It's funny. Last night I got to meet the legendary Cheryl Dunye, and she made The Watermelon Woman, which is obviously a huge inspiration for this film.
This has been called, I think some people have said this is like the spiritual successor to that movie.
Yeah, I gotta stop reading these Letterboxd reviews, because the fact that I know that is embarrassing. I'm like, yeah, I read the same Letterboxd review. Thanks to whoever wrote that. Whoever wrote the mean ones, that hurt my feelings. No, I'm kidding. No, I think Cheryl was talking about, you gave birth. Now you have to go have other children, right? Like this, having films, it's the first person that has put it in a way where I'm like, that sounds actually kind of fun. This was 6 years, and we talk about the movie being fun and whimsical. It was a really hard process for me. I think there's the seeking that led to me having a lot of like emotional breakdowns, but also just directing your first feature film while you're in front of the camera is a challenge. So whatever I do, I can promise you my next project won't be a self-reflexive documentary in which I'm in it. I really am curious about exploring anything I haven't done before. So narrative, episodic, adaptation. There's a lot of different things. I like making things, and this film has allowed me to explore like creative direction, lighting, set design, editing, how to score a movie. I've learned so much, and it's full of all of my favorite things and things that delight me. But yeah, I think if I'm going to like maintain my sanity, then we're going to have to pivot into narrative. And then I'll talk to you again 5 years from now and be like, surprise, surprise, I lost my mind making a narrative movie too.
Okay, yeah. No, I love that though. I think that definitely sounds true to the experience, the journey you've been on, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you taking the time again, and I wish the film all the success, and yeah.
Thank you. And actually, let me strike that from the record. My next film will be the documentary about you competing
I thought I missed that. Oh.
Yeah. So actually, that's my next project, and I'll see you for filming on, what day is it?
Oh, I'll be sick that day.
Oh, okay. Well, Anyway, guys, stay tuned. That's me, Jazmin Jones, dropping my next project. You heard it here first.